Am I onto something? Because for the month of May, I had five-star read, probably. Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. It's that time of the month again where I'm coming at you with all the books that I have read for the month of May, along with all my data and stats for you guys to see. This time around, I'm doing something a little bit different per recommendation from another comment in my April monthly wrap-up. Thank you so much for your suggestions. I'm going to try to implement it in this video and make it a little bit more snappy and fun to look at. And as always, I'm always open for suggestions, especially when it comes to my video editing skills. I welcome them with open arms because I'm always trying to level up my editing skills. I did finish 11 books this month, and I'm planning to go in depth a little bit with all my graphs. As always, I always provide the timestamps in the description, so you can feel free to jump around to your favorite parts of the video or just watch it all the way through if you just want to watch the full video. So now let's head on over to a different screen. Hello, hi. We should be in a different screen mode now, and you should only be able to see a little bit of my face and a lot of empty space for you to see all the graphs and data I have. I got this inspiration from another YouTuber's quarterly statistics video, so I'll have his information down in the description and in the cards as always. So now let's quickly go over all the data I have for the month of May. This month, hands down, is my best month so far in 2024. I read 11 books this month with approximately 3,600 pages and an average star rating of 4.22. Of course, I always have to share with you guys my favorite piece of data, and that is the amount of money saved. I saved a total of $138 this month using my library resources or the Spotify premium audiobook feature. And out of all the books I read this month, 8 of them were from the library/audiobooks. And this is my highest borrowed amount in a month so far, and that's probably why it padded up the numbers of books I read, simply because I wanted to get through them before my reservation/loan was due. So I powered through a lot of books to make sure I met those deadlines, and it turned out amazing, great, spectacular, and now I have a very solid month for the month of May. And on top of the 11 books I finished, I actually have 2 books that I'm rolling over for the month of May, and 1 book that is currently an ongoing series. So that book is currently on hiatus. I won't be able to get the rest of the chapters until when they come off of hiatus, but I'm gonna put that tag as on hiatus because I know if that book was not on hiatus and I could binge read it, I would have read it all this month. The first graph I have up is my absolute favorite, and it is the pages read per day broken down by books. You can see on the screen it has been a very colorful month, and I average about 117 pages read per day, which is wow. I remember in my previous vlog I wasn't sure how many pages I read on average, but I love seeing this piece of data, so now I know that I can read up to about 100 pages a day. But my absolute favorite piece of trend for this graph is the fact that whenever you see me start a new book, I always start off slow, reading about 50 to 70 pages, and then it gradually grows until I binge all of it in one night, and then you see the huge spike in the number of pages I read on a singular day. And that's pretty interesting. I didn't notice it before, but at least for the month of May, it is extremely obvious to me. On to the next piece of graph you see here. It is the breakdown of the formats of the books that I read for the month of May. I feel like this is a very normal breakdown for me for the format that I like to read in. However, I know that in June it will be mostly physical books, so I'm really excited to see how the graph and the data changes. I'm really curious as to how many pages I read per day on physical books versus my Kindle, because one of the great things about having a Kindle is the fact that I can lug it around anywhere. So I'm definitely really excited to see my stats for June and compare it to the previous months. Next up is the star breakdown of all the books that I read this month, and you saw that right, 5-star books in the 5th month of the year. So something is in the air for May. The 555s were really vibing it out for the month of May, and I really enjoyed that. Following up, I do have 2 books that I rated 4 stars and 4 books that I rated 3 stars. So no zeros, no ones, no 2 stars this month. Just a very good reading month, because on average my reads for this month has been extremely solid at a 4.22 stars. Now onto my genre breakdown for the month of May. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because there's way too many genres genres for me to cover, but you can get a good idea of the kind of books that I read here. A little bit of information on how I use my genre tags is that every book can get up to 3 tags, and a lot of the time I put these tags for myself. So if I read a book and this is the tag and the genre that I'm sensing from this book, I will tag it as such. Otherwise, sometimes I might refer to Goodreads for a little bit of help on what I should tag it. And of course, what I tag my books might be different from how you would tag your books, but this is overall the vibe that I get from my books, and therefore these are the genres that I read. Now, onto the same note of all these graphs and data that I collect, are you guys interested in a quarterly breakdown? Because I feel like quarterly breakdown will have a lot more data for you to see. I'm most definitely going to be doing a yearly breakdown, but maybe I can do Q1 and Q2 in June, and we can do the rest of the quarters in December, January of next year. I think it would be a really fun video because you actually get to see a lot more data and statistics. So definitely let me know in the comment section if you would like that and it's something that would interest you. All right, let's talk about the books that I read for the month of May. Some of you guys might notice that some of the books I'm discussing here, I've already covered in my reading vlog. So I will just quickly go over them and link you guys to the videos that have a much more extensive, detailed conversation about the books I read. But I also don't want to dismiss it or forget about it in the monthly wrap up. So I'm including them here, but we'll just go through them in a rapid fire session. And as always, if you've already heard my review for it, feel free to skip forward to the end where I will be discussing the 4 books that I did not really talk about on my reading vlog just because I don't do reading vlogs every week. So it doesn't really encompass all the books that I read over the course of the month. So let's quickly jump into all the books that I read in the second week of May. The first being Mr. Wrong Number. I gave this 3.5 stars. It was kind of a disappointing read because at the beginning of the book, I had all vibes, all giggles. It was really great. It was kind of like a rom-com where the female lead puts herself in very strange situations, and a lot of times it's kind of humorous, but the last 5% of the book really threw me out of it because of how fast the third act breakup happened and then how quickly it got resolved. It didn't feel realistic to me, and it really took away from the book. Where the book could have been a solid 4 or 4.5 stars for me, it made it drag down to 3.5 stars. Next is a manhwa named Just Leave Me Be, and I'm bumping this down to 3 stars from 3.5 stars as I mentioned in the previous reading vlog. So upon reflection, it feels like a very average read. There wasn't anything that really surprised me in the book or kept my attention hooked onto it aside from the artwork, so I'm bumping it down to an average 3-star rating. The next book I read was The Cruel Prince, and I gave it 3.5 stars. This book was so close on being DNF and being a 1-star read, but the last 30% of the book really took off and it gave the book much more sense and meaning, and the plot was thickened up at the end, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next book. The biggest reason why I didn't DNF it, even though it took me about 70% into the book to really enjoy it, was mainly because of other YouTubers on here that have read Holly Black's work and they gave me warning. So this book did take a really long time for me to get into, but when I got into it, I really got into it, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next book. I feel like I will give the next book a much higher rating with the way the plot is happening now, and as long as she doesn't have that really slow build-up like she did in the first book. From what I hear, the first book is usually the slow build-up with a lot of character development and world building, and that's probably why I struggle to enjoy it so much, especially since I listened to it as an audiobook. And I mentioned this in multiple reading vlogs, but I couldn't get into the audiobook, so don't worry, Wicked King, I will be reading it on my Kindle. The last book for the second week of May was The Kiss Quotient, and this was so cute but so spicy at the same time. I was very, very surprised, but probably my favorite part about this book was the Vietnamese representation. I felt like it really rang true to my own family and my own experience in my own Vietnamese house, so I think she really nailed it with the Vietnamese representation and how Vietnamese families show their love and how just absolutely chaotic our household always is. So after I finished reading the book, I did read some comments, and I do have to say this is very insta love, which I personally don't mind, but I think the thing that got to most people was the fact that it felt a lot like gender swap Pretty Woman, and I have to be real honest with you guys, I have not watched Pretty Woman. So for me, the plot was extremely new to me, and I just love how Stella navigated intimacy and her learning how to be intimate with someone. I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Now on to my 3 5-star reads that I actually managed to capture in a reading vlog. That was spectacular. I did not expect my weekly it to be that good, but just the fact that I was able to capture it made me so happy. So let's quickly go over the books that I read during that week. So the first book is Sociopath, a Memoir. I felt like this book accomplishes what it was trying to do, which was to show other sociopaths how Patrick navigates through life and her relationship as a sociopath. I personally think that if you're into psychology, this is a must read for you. If not, listen to it as an audiobook. Patrick is an amazing narrator, and I did not feel bored at all. It was not a dry read, and I thoroughly enjoyed the book. LMA Book Club actually made a full video talking about her thoughts and her opinions about the book, so definitely go ahead and check out her video. She was actually the reason why I listened to this book in the first place. She mentioned it in her April monthly wrap-up, and I felt like that book was the perfect book for me, and I had just finished The Cruel Prince, so I had time on my hand to pick up another audiobook. The next 5-star read was Butcher and Blackbird, and this book, guys, it is so freaking funny. The amount of times that I've caught myself sitting there smiling, laughing because of the comments made in that book was just out of this world. I absolutely adored it. It is very love at first sight, and it can be gruesome at some points because we're talking about 2 serial killers. So I believe this is dubbed as a dark rom-com, but if you're just in it for a good time and you're not too grossed out by little details, or if you're a crime girly like I am, I think you would absolutely love this book. It was so hilarious, so fun, had me on my toes the whole time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The only thing I wish I could change about the book was to give Sloane a little bit more backstory. You definitely do know kind of her abandonment issues with her parents, but we don't really get to see it visually interacted and really shown to us. So that's the only thing I wish I could change. But other than that, I'm so excited for the next book that's going to come out as part of this trilogy. I believe it's called Leather and Lark, and I didn't pre-order it yet. I'm not 100% sure if I want to grab it via Libby or if I should just pick it up at the bookstore. I haven't really decided if I want a physical copy of the book yet, but we'll see. I have a lot of books to get through, so right now I'm not really trying to add more onto my physical TBR. Last, but definitely not least, I think this one is probably tied to being my favorite book of the month of May, and it is Divine Rivals. This book is the perfect book for people who want to dabble into fantasy but not ready for the full commitment of all the dramatic details and the world building. Honestly, I don't think I was able to do it justice in my reading vlog review, so I'm gonna give another attempt on telling you guys about this book and trying to convince you guys to read it. This is a historical war front book with a sprinkle of magic / fantasy following 2 journalists that are writing about the war. These 2 journalists are actually linked and connected with each other via a magical typewriter. So every time they type something there, it gets sent to the other person. Pretty interesting, right? So over time, we see them bond with each other through their writing. There is definitely a sense of insta-love, with their physical attraction being the first thing there. However, a lot of their bond really grow with the letters that they write to each other. So definitely don't brush it off just yet if insta-love isn't your thing, because she makes a point of saying that she was into the person who's writing to her, but she also can't help but feel the physical attraction to the male lead, and eventually we come to find out that they are the same person and the story progresses. Honestly, the ending of this book, if it weren't for the fact that I had about 4 other books that I needed to finish and get it back to the library on time, I would have insta-bought the next book on the spot and read it, because the cliffhanger they left us on, oh my god, I just need to know what happens next. I really want to purchase the next book, and I might try to squeeze it into my June reading. But if you guys haven't seen my June TBR list, definitely check that out. I have a full stack this month, so I don't know how I'm gonna fare, but I'm really going to try to squeeze it in. All right, now let's cover the other books that I read in the month of May. The first one up is The Seventh Loop, Villainess. Are you even surprised at this point? Are you even surprised? Because the last 3 reading vlogs that I had all had this book in it, simply because I really enjoy this book and I was catching up on the series. However, this is the latest book that's been released. The next one comes out in September. Of course, I've already pre-ordered it, but that means the next couple of months, we will not have this book in rotation. Something that might surprise you this time around is that I'm giving this book 4 stars. Yes, I know. The other reading vlog, I gave it 5 stars, but as I briefly mentioned in my April reading vlog, something about this book just didn't really hit right with me this time around, and it's mainly because of the fact that they really stated to me how much time has passed since Riche has met Arnold. And let me tell you, it's been less than 3 months. Yes, she goes on a full-blown adventure back to back, even comes close to dying, but it's only been 2 and something months. That timeline does not comprehend with my head. I wish they would drag it out a little bit more and make it more reasonable, but it doesn't seem like the author is slowing down and he's pushing in as much plot as possible into these books in a timeline that is ridiculous. And for that reason, I bumped this book down to 4 stars. In terms of just the romantic relationship between Arnold and Riche, I'm here for it. I love it. I eat it up every single time, but anytime a plot relevant point comes into play, and it does happen a lot, this book is a lot more adventure heavy than it is romance heavy. I get reminded about the fact that the plot is really plotting it up in such a short amount of time that made no sense, because spoiler warning, here are the list of things that has happened in the past 5 books in a span of 2-ish months. Okay, let me pull out my piece of paper. During this time frame, she moved to a new kingdom. She solved a mystery dealing with fake currency. She gets poisoned and almost died, but somehow she's up and running in the next day. And then she got kidnapped. This is a lot of story, a lot of plot point. And for all of that to happen within a span of less than 3 months is a little wild. You would think she would at least have a month off after she was poisoned and almost died, but no. We just keep going. The plot just keep happening. And I just feel like, author, you can just slow down. You don't have to keep it in pace for 3 months. You could just extend the time. But it just seems very insta-love and fast, and that's why I'm bumping it down to 4 stars. I'm going to be really disappointed if the next 2 books make me dump it down to a 3.5 stars. So I'll keep you guys updated. We'll see how this goes. The next book was an unexpected 5-star read for me, and it is Front Desk. This book was actually a recommendation from Chronically D. Chris. I'll have her information in the cards and description, but this was such an emotional read, and I've never felt so seen as an immigrant child. This is a middle grade book that follows a character named Mia and her struggle as a young immigrant in America dealing with poverty. This was such an emotional read for me because I felt like I was able to see the parallel between her experience and my own experience coming to America. I think this book is great, especially if you want to see the representation of what a young child immigrant coming to America is like. I felt like even though her experiences weren't one-to-one with me, the feeling and the heartbreak and the struggles are all there, and they are very similar. It's so funny because I felt so seen in this book, and I really enjoyed it even though I'm nearing 30 and these experiences were a decade, 2 decades ago, but somehow it managed to pull on my heartstring and open up some of the memories that I had as a child. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing per se, but I just felt like this book was very good at depicting what a child's life as an immigrant is, and I wish I could have had this book when I was younger and could have had the hope that someday it'll get better, and it does. So I think I just really enjoyed this book because it was very true and it gave a lot of hope, especially for any young immigrants out there. If they end up reading this book, maybe they'll have that hope and see that in the future it does get better. So I generally don't make a note of quotes in books, but one of the quotes in this book really stood out to me, and I'm going to read it to you guys. That's the thing about moving kids from one country to another. They're not good at either languages. Because I feel like this is me. I remember all the struggles that I have communicating with my parents, and then all the struggles I have in my English classes and how I'm always behind everybody. I got a lot of C's in English, and I just couldn't understand why I was so bad at both languages, because you would think that I would be good at one or the other, but somehow I wasn't able to effectively communicate with either languages. And that's still a struggle to me today. My English is definitely a lot better now, but even as I'm editing these videos, I can hear the grammatical errors and the grammatical mistakes that I make on videos when I'm speaking. And it doesn't bother me anymore, but it's definitely something that's in the back of my mind. And this quote from the book just made me feel so seen. Again, I'm just repeating myself, but this book just spoke to me on some level. Similar to Mia, my parents also expected me to be good at math and science because I wasn't good at English and I would never be as fluent as other native English speakers. So just the fact that I was able to draw so much parallel from this book just made it a 5-star read for me. I would always recommend this book, especially to maybe younger audiences as well. I'm even thinking of gifting this book to my nieces. I think it would be good for them to kind of learn and experience the emotion that both my brother and I faced, and it would be just a good learning experience for them. So it's that good that I'm probably going to give to my nieces. While the last book was a little bit of an emotional review for me, the next one was a solid 3 stars, and it is the Divorcee's Dessert Cafe. This is a manhwa, and it's very plain at the moment right now. I just picked it up because I felt like the plot was a little bit different. So this book currently only has 30 chapters, and they are on hiatus since 2023. I'm not really sure if they'll publish more depending on the hype around the book. But at the moment, I picked it up because the synopsis seemed interesting. I thought the female lead was going to be a strong, independent female who don't need no man, but unfortunately, that is not really the case. She does leave her divorce with dignity, and that's basically the first chapter. And then we just see her go through the struggles of opening a cafe, standing up, and being really strong about it. But I just hate that somehow there's always a Prince Charming trying to fix everything up, because there's always one situation she can't resolve without the Prince Charming's help. The characters themselves are alright. This is a very plain, bland book. It's almost every other manhwa at the moment right now. There's not a lot of plot and action for me to keep going, and the book is on hiatus anyways, so I thought I would just lump this in. It's just a solid 3-star read. Nothing too crazy, but nothing too bad. Alright, now let's quickly go over the last book of May, and it is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I gave this book 4 stars. It was a really hard book for me to rate. I was going back and forth between 4 or 5 stars, but ultimately I ended up with 4 stars. Personally, I think I would rate Happy Place higher than Beach Read, simply because I like the characters in Happy Place a lot more than Beach Read. The plot and character development for me in Beach Read was a solid 5 stars, but something about their romance just didn't click with me. I didn't necessarily like them together. I didn't really see the spark or the tension that the author was trying to give and portray. I think it would have just been fine if they ended up just being friends, and friends who are supporting each other, trying to get each other through a rough time. However, because this book was technically marketed as a romance novel, I had to bump it down to 4 stars because the romance there just didn't click for me. Honestly, I think I would have liked the book just as much if it was just about their friendship and how they navigated through a rough patch in their life together, rather than forcing us with the romance that I just didn't really see the spark going. As always, I feel like Emily Henry is such a good writer in describing and portraying actual human relationships with each other in day-to-day life, and how she handled the female lead's grief towards her dad was just amazing and beautiful. Nothing gets easily resolved. It definitely played onto the factor of time and gradual growth and acceptance, and I really enjoyed that in her book, and that's why I gave it a good solid rating, even though the romance was not there for me. And that is it for my May monthly wrap up. This was such a long video because I had 11 whole books, but let me know down in the comment section if you read any of these books, and if so, what did you rate it? And if you guys did not read any of these books, definitely let me know in the comment section what books you guys been reading, because I'm always trying to add more books to my TBR list. It's never ending, and I don't think it will ever end. I don't think I'll ever get through all of them, but am I still asking for more book recommendation? Heck yes. Anyways, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this monthly wrap up. If you guys like bookish or vlog content, definitely make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next Sunday for another video. Bye!